Bad Policy, Chapter 1, Scene 1. Driving up my street, a pillow calling my name, I spotted Cincinnati police vehicles collected near the top of the hill. My stomach clenched. An animated gathering of neighbors stood across the street from my house. With my Victorian's ancient wiring, I immediately thought of fire. Not that, no fire engines. I pulled to the curb behind the phalanx of cop cars blocking the street and approached an officer. "What happened?" I asked, surprised either one of us could hear my words over the hammering of my heart. "Other side of the street," he snarled and pointed to the gawkers. "But this is my house." "You live here? Hold on a sec. Hey, Sarge!" He yelled over his shoulder without taking his eyes off me. "Over here!" The sergeant gave me the once-over as he strode across the lawn, thumbs tucked into his belt. "This guy claims he lives here," the patrolman said. The sergeant held out his hand. "Got some ID?" The patrolman added, "Back to your post." I dug through my wallet and handed him my license. "What happened?" I asked. He compared the license to my face. "Seamus McCree?" It's pronounced Seamus, not Seamus. "Now you say it. The name rings a bell. Right address. We got some questions for you. It'd be better if we talk somewhere quiet. Any objection if we take a little trip downtown? We'll give you a ride back. Frankly, I'm not sure when the crime scene guys will release your house. You should be thinking about a place you can stay tonight." He gently took my arm and guided me to the cruiser, opened the back door, and ducked me in. We were moving by the time I realized he had neatly removed me from my home and temporarily focused my attention on where I could stay, rather than where we were going. "Now can you tell me what happened?" I asked through the grill separating us. "Sorry, we need to confirm a few things with you first." My father had been a Boston police sergeant when he died. Even as tired as I was, I could interpret his answer. "You're a suspect. We'll ask the questions." The officer left me alone in an interrogation room, smelling of burnt coffee and justified fear. I slipped off my suit coat and hung it over the back of the metal chair and loosened my tie. If the police had only wanted information, the questioning would have started immediately. Since I was cooling my heels in a room decorated with a table bolted to the floor, 3 chairs, and what I knew to be a one-way mirror, I was clearly a suspect. Standard interrogation procedures included keeping the subject off balance. One approach was to use a sterile room away from familiar surroundings and with minimal furnishings and putrid green walls. This place fit the bill. Then they add pressure by keeping the suspect waiting alone in the silence. But silence would not work with me. A thinker by nature, I thrived on solitude. Despite that, corded muscles grabbed my neck and shoulders, adding to the headache I'd had all day from lack of sleep and too much caffeine. My tension came from not knowing what had happened at my house, combined with the knowledge that this interrogation room belonged to the homicide unit. Sitting alone in an interrogation room tends to make anyone feel guilty, which is the reason the police leave you to stew in your own juices. I was not innocent of everything. I had my secrets. But I had not killed anyone, so if whatever happened at my house involved a homicide, I was not guilty in deed or spirit. Any defense attorney will tell you not to speak to the police without a lawyer present. I considered requesting counsel, but ultimately rejected that course. I knew plenty of lawyers, but none of them were defense attorneys. I didn't plan to lie, but if during the interrogation I even thought about a lie, I promised myself to stop the questioning and request counsel. Having decided on a course of action, tension eased from my neck. The headache stayed. Further thinking was fruitless until I learned more about what had happened. Since I had only had 2 short naps in the last 60 hours, I leaned over the desk and rested my head on my forearms. I awoke to the opening of the door. It took me a moment to recognize where I was. The same sergeant entered the room accompanied by a Detective Lewis, gray suit, gray hair, gray complexion. He took the chair opposite me and placed the digital recorder on the table. The sergeant scooted a chair to the room's corner for himself. "Mr. McCree," Lewis said, "okay if we record this?" "Sure," I said. "Doing video too?" Lewis traded a glance with the sergeant. "Been here before?" "Lieutenant Hastings," I said, except I was in the closet behind the one-way mirror. "When was this?" Lewis rubbed his left thumb and pointer finger. I took it as a nervous tell. "Last year. Maybe you've heard of my employer, Criminal Investigations Group, CIG. The Cincinnati Police Department engaged us to help on a homicide. Does she know I'm here?" "Now I remember why your name rings a bell," the sergeant said. "It was before you joined homicide, Lewis. They did a great job and tied the Cincinnati murder in with a boatload of other murders and financial crimes out in Chillicothe." Detective Lewis slipped from the room while the sergeant asked for specifics about the Chillicothe case. Lewis soon returned and clicked on the recorder. "Let's get started." He gave the date, time, persons present, and got me to acknowledge that I was appearing voluntarily and agreed to allow them to record the conversation. "We looked all over for you today," Lewis said. "Where were you?" "I flew down to Atlanta this morning for a meeting. When I finished the meeting, I flew back and drove directly home from the airport." "When did you leave your house?" "Actually, the last time I was home was Friday night. I flew to Chicago, worked there the whole weekend, then this morning at work flew from Chicago to Atlanta." "What time did you leave Friday night?" "9-ish. Where did you stay in Chicago?" "I worked the whole time at my client's office." "The whole time? He doesn't smell like he's been working that long, does he, Sergeant? Who's the client? Who can we contact to confirm your whereabouts?" I let the grammar error slip. Most people don't like being corrected. I surreptitiously checked my watch. It was 4 in the afternoon. I had showered only 11 hours ago at the client's health spa. "I signed a confidentiality agreement. I can give you all the specifics once they announce the deal. Until then, you'll just have to trust me." "Trust you? Now, why didn't I think of that myself?" The detective asked the ceiling before leaning in toward me. "What kind of deal are we talking about? This for your employer?" He checked his notes. "Criminal Investigations Group? Who can corroborate your story?" Well, asking for trust did sound dense, didn't it? This was financial consulting I do on the side. My head felt like it was following my body up by a few inches. I really needed sleep so I could think clearly. "Look, I can tell you this much. I got a call from my client Friday evening and flew to Chicago that night. I went directly to his office and worked there the whole time. This morning, I caught a limo to Midway and flew directly to the Atlanta airport, where I met somebody in one of the Delta Lounge meeting rooms." "Just a sec," the detective said, and left the room. "Don't mind me," I said to the sergeant in the corner, and rested my head on my hands. The sooner I told them something, the sooner I could get some sleep. What could I say beyond "trust me" without violating the confidentiality agreement? I mentally scanned the past few days for a loophole.